What happens when royalty meets reality television and the crown slips? In just 37 seconds, one comment, one sharp retort from Sunny Hostin would unravel what was supposed to be a carefully orchestrated interview and turn it into one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. This is the story of how a duchess became the villain on live television. The stage was set like any other episode of The View. The cameras were rolling, the audience was seated, and the co-hosts were ready to welcome their special guest. But this was not just any guest. This was Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, stepping into the lion's den of daytime talk shows. The energy in the studio felt different that day. You could sense it. The producers knew they had something big. The audience knew they were about to witness something memorable. But nobody, absolutely nobody, could have predicted just how quickly things would spiral out of control. Sunny Hostin sat at the table, poised and professional as always. She had done her homework. She had prepared thoughtful questions. She was ready to have a real conversation, not just another softball celebrity interview. Sunny has always been known for her directness, her refusal to shy away from tough topics, and her commitment to holding people accountable, regardless of their status or title. Today would be no different. The interview started smoothly enough. Meghan walked out to applause, waving to the crowd with that practiced smile. She sat down, adjusted her microphone, and the pleasantries began. The co-hosts asked about her latest projects. See, her life in California, the usual warm-up questions. Meghan answered with rehearsed precision, offering carefully crafted responses that revealed nothing and said everything at the same time. It all felt very controlled, very managed, very safe. Then Sunny Hostin decided to ask the question everyone was thinking, but no one else wanted to voice. She leaned forward slightly, her expression serious, and said, "Meghan, you've spoken a lot about your struggles and your challenges, and many people sympathize with that. But there are also many people who feel that some of your public statements have been contradictory. You've asked for privacy while doing multiple high-profile interviews. You've spoken about wanting a normal life while maintaining a very public presence. Can you help us understand that?" The temperature in the room shifted instantly. Meghan's smile flickered for just a second, a micro-expression that the cameras caught, but that might have been missed in real time. She recovered quickly, but the mask had slipped. You could see it in her eyes. This was not the question she wanted. This was not part of the plan. She took a breath, visible even from the audience, and responded. "Well, Sunny," Meghan began, her voice taking on an edge that had not been there moments before. "I think that's a very reductive way of looking at a complex situation. You're simplifying things that cannot be simplified. Privacy does not mean silence. Privacy means being able to control your own narrative instead of having it controlled by people who do not understand your life." Sunny nodded, taking in the response. But she was not backing down. "I understand that," she said calmly. "But when you choose to do interviews, when you choose to release documentaries about your life, when you write books about your experiences, aren't you also controlling the narrative in a very public way? Doesn't that contradict the desire for privacy?" And that's when it started to unravel. Meghan's posture changed. She sat up straighter, her shoulders squared. Her voice grew louder, more defensive. "You know what, Sunny? I think what you're doing right now is exactly the problem. You're sitting here in judgment, acting like you know what it's like to have your entire life dissected by the media, to have lies told about you, to have people question your every move." Sunny remained calm, her voice steady and measured. "Meghan, I'm not judging you. I'm asking you a question that many people have asked. I'm a journalist. It's my job to ask difficult questions. And respectfully, you agreed to come on this show, knowing that we have these kinds of conversations." The other co-hosts exchanged glances. The audience was silent. You could feel the tension building, like a storm gathering strength just before it breaks. Meghan's face was flushed now, her composure slipping further with each passing second. She leaned forward, pointing a finger across the table. "Don't you dare lecture me about what I agreed to," Meghan said, her voice rising. "You invited me here under the pretense of having a respectful conversation, and instead you're ambushing me with gotcha questions designed to make me look bad. This is exactly the kind of treatment that drove me out of the UK in the first place." Sunny's expression did not change. She has interviewed countless people, faced down difficult subjects, and never once lost her cool. She was not about to start now. "Meghan, with all due respect, asking you to explain your own public statements is not an ambush. It's a fair question. If you find that uncomfortable, perhaps the issue is not with the question, but with the answer." The room went completely silent. Even the producers in the control room held their breath. That line, delivered with such quiet authority, hung in the air like smoke. It was respectful, but it was also a clear boundary. Sunny was not going to be bullied or intimidated. She was doing her job, and she was doing it well. Meghan's face went from flushed to pale. Her eyes widened. For a moment, it looked like she might actually walk off the set right then and there. But instead, she doubled down. She leaned even further forward, her voice dripping with contempt. "You know what your problem is, Sunny. You think because you sit at this table every day, you have the right to tear people down. You think you're so smart, so insightful, but really you're just another person throwing stones from a glass house." The other co-hosts tried to intervene. One of them started to say something, tried to redirect the conversation, but Meghan cut her off. "No, I'm not done. I came here thinking this would be different. I thought The View was supposed to be a place where women support women, but clearly that only applies when you agree with each other. The moment someone challenges your worldview, you attack." Sunny took a slow breath. She folded her hands on the table in front of her. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than before, but somehow carried more weight. "Meghan, I have supported many women on this show and in my career. Supporting women does not mean agreeing with everything they say or do. It means holding space for honest conversations. It means asking the hard questions that need to be asked. What I will not do is give anyone, regardless of who they are, a pass just because they expect it." The audience, which had been silent up until this point, started to react. There were a few scattered claps. Someone in the back said, "That's right." The energy was shifting, and not in Meghan's favor. She could feel it. You could see it register on her face. She was losing the room. "Wow," Meghan said, shaking her head slowly. "And this is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. You're all sitting here, nodding along, acting like she's some kind of hero for attacking me on live television. Do you people not see what's happening here? This is a setup. This entire thing was designed to make me look bad." One of the other co-hosts, trying desperately to salvage the situation, jumped in. "Meghan, nobody is attacking you. We're just having a conversation. These are questions that a lot of people have. If you don't want to answer them, that's okay. We can move on to something else." But Meghan was not interested in moving on. She had been triggered, and there was no coming back from it now. Move on? Move on to what? More questions designed to trap me? More opportunities for Sunny here to show off how clever she is? No, I don't think so. I think I'm done here. Sunny remained completely calm. "Meghan, you're welcome to leave if you want to, but I want to be very clear about something. I asked you a fair question. Your reaction to that question says far more than any answer you could have given." That was it. That was the final straw. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that echoed through the studio. She pulled off her microphone, not carefully, but with a sharp yank that made the sound technicians wince. "You know what?" she said, her voice shaking now. "I don't need this. I don't need to sit here and be disrespected by someone who clearly has an agenda. Sunny did not stand. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked up at Meghan and said, "I have no agenda except to have an honest conversation. If that feels like disrespect to you, I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for doing my job." Meghan threw the microphone down onto the table with enough force that it bounced. The sound boomed through the speakers, making everyone in the studio jump. "Your job," she spat, "is to tear people down and make yourself look good. Well, congratulations, Sunny. You've succeeded. I hope you're proud of yourself." She turned to storm off the stage, but before she could take more than 2 steps, Sunny spoke one more time. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the chaos like a knife. "Meghan, one last thing. Accountability is not the same as disrespect. The sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be." Meghan froze. She turned back around, her face a mixture of rage and disbelief. "How dare you?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow more menacing than when she had been yelling. "How dare you stand there and lecture me about accountability? You don't know anything about me. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know the sacrifices I've made." Sunny met her gaze without flinching. "You're right. I don't know everything about your life. But I do know what you've chosen to share publicly. And when you share things publicly, you open yourself up to questions about those things. That's not cruelty. That's just how it works." By this point, the producers were frantically signaling to cut to commercial. The other co-hosts were looking at each other, unsure whether to intervene or stay quiet. The audience was completely riveted, some people with their hands over their mouths, others leaning forward in their seats. This was not entertainment anymore. This was real conflict playing out in real time. Meghan took a step back toward the table, her finger pointing at Sunny again. "You want to talk about what I've shared publicly? Fine. Let's talk about it. I shared my truth. I shared my pain. I shared my experiences of racism, of isolation, of being abandoned by an institution that was supposed to protect me. And people like you sit there and question whether it was real. You question whether I'm being honest. You question my motives. That, Sunny, is what cruelty looks like." Sunny shook her head slowly. "I never questioned your pain, Meghan. I never said your experiences were not real. What I questioned was the contradiction between saying you want privacy and then doing interview after interview. Those are 2 different things. Your pain can be valid, and your choices can still be questioned. They're not mutually exclusive." The logic was sound. The reasoning was clear. But Meghan was beyond reason at this point. She had been challenged in a way she clearly was not used to being challenged. In her world, her truth was supposed to be accepted without question. Her narrative was supposed to be absorbed without critique. And here was Sunny Hostin, calmly and professionally refusing to play along. "You know what?" Meghan said, her voice dripping with venom now. "You're just like all the rest of them. You're just like the tabloids. You're just like the people who made my life hell. You hide behind this facade of journalism and fairness, but really, you're just a bully with a platform." That accusation, calling Sunny a bully, seemed to land differently than the other insults. One of the other co-hosts audibly gasped. Someone in the audience said, "Oh no, she didn't." Even the camera operators seemed to shift uncomfortably. Sunny Hostin has spent her career fighting for justice, speaking truth to power, and standing up for people who cannot stand up for themselves. To call her a bully was not just wrong, it was offensive. Sunny's jaw tightened. It was the first sign of real emotion she had shown throughout the entire exchange. But when she spoke, her voice was still controlled. "Meghan, I'm going to say this once. I am not a bully. I have never been a bully. I ask tough questions because that's my job. If you cannot handle tough questions, then perhaps you should reconsider putting yourself in positions where tough questions will be asked." Meghan let out a bitter laugh. There it is. The victim blaming. If I can't handle the questions, I should just stay quiet, right? I should just accept whatever treatment comes my way and not say anything. That's exactly the kind of thinking that forced me out of the royal family. That's not what I said, Sunny replied firmly. What I said was that if you choose to be in the public eye, which you very clearly have chosen to be, then you need to be prepared for public scrutiny. That's not victim blaming. That's reality. The audience started to clap again, louder this time. A few people even stood up. They were not clapping for Meghan. They were clapping for Sunny. They were clapping because someone was finally saying out loud what so many people had been thinking. They were clapping because Sunny was not backing down, was not being intimidated, was not giving in to the theatrics. Meghan looked out at the audience, at the people clapping, and her face contorted with anger. Unbelievable, she muttered. Absolutely unbelievable. You people are clapping for this? You're celebrating someone tearing down a woman who has been through hell? One of the co-hosts tried again to intervene. Meghan, please, let's just take a breath and... No, Meghan cut her off. I'm done taking breaths. I'm done being polite. I'm done pretending like this is okay. This is not okay. None of this is okay. I came here in good faith, and I've been attacked from the moment I sat down. Sunny leaned back in her chair, i.e. crossing her arms. Meghan, you were not attacked. You were asked questions. If you cannot tell the difference between those two things, that's concerning. That calm, measured response seemed to infuriate Meghan even more. She picked up her purse from beside the chair and slung it over her shoulder. I'm leaving, she announced. I'm not going to stay here and be insulted by someone who clearly has no respect for what I've been through. You're free to leave, Sunny said simply. But before you do, I want you to understand something. Respect is earned, not demanded. And you don't earn respect by expecting everyone to accept your version of events without question. You earn it by being willing to engage with different perspectives, even when they're uncomfortable. Meghan stared at her for a long moment. The entire studio was silent again, waiting to see what would happen next. Finally, Meghan spoke, her voice cold and clipped. You're going to regret this, Sunny. You're going to regret the way you treated me today. Mark my words. Sunny did not blink. The only thing I would regret is not asking the questions that needed to be asked. So no, Meghan, I don't think I'll regret this at all. And with that, Meghan Markle turned on her heel and walked off the stage. Her footsteps echoed through the silent studio. The cameras followed her as she stormed past the crew, past the producers, and out the door. The sound of the door slamming shut reverberated through the building, and then she was gone. The co-hosts sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then, slowly, the audience began to clap again. This time, it was not just a few people. It was everyone. They were on their feet, applauding, cheering for Sunny Hostin, who had stood her ground, who had refused to be bullied, who had done her job with integrity and grace even in the face of extraordinary pressure. Sunny gave a small nod of acknowledgement, but did not smile. She was not celebrating. She was not gloating. She had simply done what needed to be done. The producers signaled to cut to commercial, and the red lights on the cameras finally went dark. The other co-hosts turned to Sunny, some with concern, some with admiration. One of them reached over and squeezed her hand. "Are you okay?" she asked. Sunny nodded. "I'm fine," she said quietly. "I just asked questions. That's all I did." And she was right. That's all she had done. She had asked fair, reasonable questions that any journalist would have asked. She had not been cruel. She had not been unfair. She had not been disrespectful. She had simply refused to treat Meghan Markle differently than she would treat anyone else. And that, apparently, was Meghan's greatest offense. The idea that she should be held to the same standard as everyone else was something she simply could not accept. As the show went to commercial, the crew began to buzz with conversation. Everyone was talking about what had just happened. The producers were already making phone calls, no doubt preparing for the fallout. The audience members were turning to each other, their faces animated with excitement and disbelief. This was not just another episode of The View. This was television history. This was the moment when someone finally pushed back against the carefully constructed narrative. And it all fell apart in spectacular fashion. What started as a simple question about contradictions had escalated into a full-blown confrontation. Meghan had expected to be handled with kid gloves, to be given a platform to share her story without challenge. Instead, she encountered a journalist who refused to play that game. Sunny Hostin had done what good journalists do. She had asked the hard questions. She had followed up when the answers did not make sense. She had maintained her composure even when faced with hostility and personal attacks. The contrast between the two women could not have been more stark. On one side, you had Meghan, who came onto the show expecting deference and left in a rage when she did not receive it. On the other side, you had Sunny, who remained calm, professional, and focused throughout the entire ordeal. She never raised her voice. She never resorted to personal attacks. She simply stood her ground and did her job. That's what made the whole thing so powerful. It was not a shouting match. It was not two people screaming at each other. It was one person asking questions, and another person completely unable to handle being questioned. The audience had seen it all unfold in real time. They had watched as Meghan became increasingly defensive, increasingly hostile, increasingly unable to control her emotions. They had watched as Sunny remained steady, refusing to be drawn into the drama, refusing to abandon her principles, and they had responded accordingly. Their applause was not just for Sunny, it was for the idea that celebrities, even royal ones, should not be above accountability. It was for the idea that asking questions is not the same as being cruel. It was for the idea that respect goes both ways. In those 37 seconds that started it all, when Sunny asked that first pointed question, she set in motion a chain of events that revealed something important. She revealed that beneath the polished exterior, beneath the carefully managed public image, there was someone who could not handle being challenged. Someone who responded to reasonable questions with anger and accusations. Someone who expected to be treated as special, as different, as above the normal rules of public discourse. The door slam that ended the interview was not just the sound of Meghan leaving the building. It was the sound of a narrative collapsing. It was the sound of expectations meeting reality. It was the sound of entitlement running headfirst into accountability and not liking what it found. And through it all, Sunny Hostin sat at that table, doing exactly what she was supposed to do, exactly what the audience deserved, exactly what journalism requires. She asked questions. She listened to answers. And when those answers did not make sense, she asked more questions. That's not an attack. That's integrity. The moment will be remembered not for what Meghan said, but for what she revealed. She revealed an inability to separate criticism from cruelty. She revealed an expectation that her story should be accepted without question. She revealed that when faced with the most basic journalistic scrutiny, she crumbles. And perhaps most tellingly, she revealed that the person she claims to be, someone who has overcome adversity and emerged stronger, may not actually exist. Because strong people can handle questions. Strong people can engage with different viewpoints. Strong people do not storm off stages because someone dared to ask them to explain themselves. Sunny Hostin proved something important that day. She proved that doing your job with integrity matters more than making your guest comfortable. She proved that treating everyone equally, regardless of their title or status, is the mark of true professionalism. She proved that you can be kind and firm at the same time. And most importantly, she proved that the truth does not need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes, the most devastating thing you can do is simply remain calm while someone else falls apart.